How are you doing?
Good. I'm really good,
Good.
actually. A lot of it's thanks to you, so thanks.
Hey, I mean, you're the one who put it in motion and did all the things. And awesome.
So yeah, it's going well.
That's amazing.
It's exciting.
You look fantastic.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
it looks like,
Thanks.
Max seemed like a good guy. So that's,
We'll keep him around.
That's
I'm
what I
gonna
want her
ask.
to think.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask you what you think later. Welcome to the No Dick Pics podcast. I'm Christina,
Max.
and we have Melissa here joining us from Kuffel Law Firm. I mean, I call you Missy, but Missy is here to talk to us about just like divorce and family law and some things that I think a lot of our listeners have either been through or could be going through or could be thinking about going through, but a lot of our listeners are in their like late 30s, 40s, fees going through, have either been through this or, like I said, are going through it right now. So I figured this could be helpful and interesting, and you have some unique perspective on things working from that angle. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So me and Missy went to high school together. I've known you forever. So Missy is also my personal divorce attorney. So when I was going through it, I knew that you had, gone off on your own, started your own firm. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm going to call Missy. Of course I'm going to call Missy. So you've really seen me through like some of the worst times of my life and seen me like during the hardest parts. And like you and your team were like really there for me, like every step of the way. And there are even things like, I'm not going to get into details about it because I've never talked about my ex on here. I don't plan to. But there are some really hard times. And there were moments where you didn't have to say the things that you said to like comfort me. And you guys did. Because like you guys were my attorneys. You didn't have to be my friends too. But I always felt a lot of support from you. And not just you, your whole team was always very supportive and very, I don't know, really made me feel like validated in how I felt and like what I was going through. Because like you know more about me than probably anyone from high school does, because you got to see a lot of things and a lot of angles, and like all the skeletons were brought out of the closet and all that stuff, so it's it's a tough time, but like I'm so glad I chose you to go through that with.
Well, and that, means everything to me. That's why I'm doing what I do. And to know that my staff, because when you start your own business and you hire people that you want to represent your vision of how you want people to be treated, that's huge, right? So to hear that is just like, that's really great. So I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah. So thank you, first of all. Thank you for getting me where I'm at now, because I am very happy now. I found Max. He's awesome. Sometimes.
Well, I feel
most of
bad
the time.
because my divorce is like completely opposite. I didn't hire a lawyer. We did a mediator, and we did a Zoom in like a half hour. So
Good for you.
There's still like, how people say they're going to be like civil. Does it often not stay civil? Like from your experience, when people are like, we're going to do this in a civil way, does it stay that way for most people or no?
So when I have a consult with someone and they say it's what we call a cooperative divorce, which I always say is the best way to do it, right? And people always say like, oh, well, don't you make more money if we like fight, litigate? I'm like, yeah, but then people are like really unhappy with their lives and they don't want to refer business because that was not a pleasant experience, right? So we try to make it as quick and easy as possible, if possible, right? So it's always, I always say, best case scenario, you come into it and you guys are cooperative and you have an agreement, or at least you're close and you're able to like, right, navigate the kind of negotiation time or whatever. But I always do a consult telling, my potential clients saying, that's great. And I hope that is the case. With that said, I would say 80% of those people who come in and say it's going to be cooperative, we're not going to fight, most of the time it doesn't. Okay. I'm not saying it turns out to be a 5-year $1 million case or something, but like they do start to get what I call squirrely, and it's like, oh, wait, we're no longer in agreement. Hey, wait, what about this? Well, I didn't know you were going to go after my blah, blah, blah. And it, there's, even I had a mediation today, which they, said, because I'm a certified mediator as well. To be clear, I cannot be their attorney and the mediator. They chose me for the mediator.
Okay.
But they were like, oh, we're like super cooperative. Like everything's like, we're total agreement, blah, blah, blah. And like, they were not when they came into mediation today. And I was like, as soon as you start talking money and separation of things and Houses, I would say one of the biggest things we deal with a lot is, the marital home, right? And especially if you have children, you can imagine a marital home and what you do with it and who moves out, who doesn't, where do they go, what do you do with the kids, how do you pay them out, how am I going to live? Those are really huge issues. And it sounds all fun, like, oh yeah, we'll be in agreement. Well, yeah, until you realize, like, wait, am I going to be homeless? Where are my kids going to live? What am I, you start looking at, like, how am I actually going to do this? Right.
Right.
And I think that's when people start to get, like, scared, which is totally understandable. Right. It is stressful. It is not an easy process. As you know, I went through a divorce of my own last year, and it wasn't super high conflict, but there were some moments. I mean, there were some moments where it was the communication was not there where it should have been, and the miscommunication leads to a lot of stress and unknown, and that fear, that anxiety, that what's going to happen, what's it going to look like, is a lot. I mean, your whole life is turned upside down. Your whole life,
Yeah.
right? You're literally, like I say, it's like throwing a bomb, like, in the middle of your world. It's literally, and especially, if you're with someone for, a decade or 2 or 3, right? I mean, their family is your family. You're, every holiday milestone, everything you do is with this group, right? Your friends start to meld. Your life start to meld, right? And so one of the things I see is that, that fear and apprehension, especially people have been together for a significant period of time. And it's like, I don't know if I can do it.
Right.
Is it worth it?
Yeah. Sometimes it's like, it's so hard to turn your life. You're literally turning your life upside down and like changing everything. Max did not.
Which is
Max's life is very similar.
Well, we even because they said, we decided to keep our own 401ks because I'm like, it's only fair. Like, I'm not going to grab her. But I know they offered, because she made more money than me, to kind of balance it out. But I was like, no, I'm good, because I was happy because I was getting rid of all the school loans. So I was like, nope, I'm winning. But yeah, I mean, and I even talked to people. I feel like for a lot of the reasons why a divorce doesn't go through is because the kids. And I remember I was doing research because at the time the kids were probably, I think, like 6, 7 years old. And I always thought, like, oh, the younger is probably worse, but it was actually, they say the older the kids get, the worse it is on them, which I would not have thought. But
Yeah, I think it's because it's so much. They're so used to it, and it's been their whole lives. It's been like this. And they're like, what do you mean you're changing everything? Especially as they're older, like when they're younger, it's like, okay.
Yeah, they don't grasp the gravity. They're more nimble to change. Typically speaking, I mean, there's 1,000 different factors.
Oh,
Right?
yeah,
But just
yeah.
like typically speaking, yeah, I think the idea of, well, let's just start here, right? So just so most people know, what most people don't realize is when you get married, you're entering a legal contract, which no one teaches you and no one tells you, which I think is just mind-boggling, right?
Right.
It's the only contract you can enter without signing anything, without agreeing to terms, without being told what you're agreeing to, without understanding what you're agreeing to. Like, I'm sorry, like, how is this a thing, right?
Right.
But it's just, that's what it is in Illinois. Now, and to be clear, talking about Illinois. I don't know what happens in other states. I'm not licensed in other states, okay? But in Illinois, you're entering a contract. What that generally means, there's a million different outliers that we wouldn't have time to go into here, but in general, that means from the date of marriage to the date of divorce, absolutely everything is going to be divided 50-50 when you're divorced. That means, debts, assets, homes, cars, bank accounts, doesn't matter if you saw it, liked it, didn't know about it. I didn't put my name on that. I didn't agree with that. Da, 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 da. That's how it goes, right? Now,
Right.
what then I say to people, but we're an actual equitable state, not an equal state. So exactly like you said, Max, it has to feel equitable, right? Is it close enough, right? Since you're, in my world, you're on the younger end, right? So you still have time to have a job and a career and build a retirement. If you're 65 and you don't have a lot of time left to build a retirement account and she has a huge one and you say, nah, it's hers, a judge would probably find that unconscionable and not let you agree to that, right? Like it still has to be. I once had a client go, you act like the judge literally just holds two bags and says, yeah, this feels good. And I was like, yes, it's exactly what it is. That's literally what it is, right? And so, it's not something people know. I would say the majority of people come to me and they're like, well, I didn't agree to that. I'm like, you did when you got married. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's like
what I tell people now. I'm like, I don't think people realize it when we'll get into prenups more later, but when people are like, I would never get a prenup. I'm like, you have one. It's whatever the state decides.
Right.
So if you don't have one, you do. You just didn't get to make the decision about it. You didn't get to decide what's in it and what's not. So, yeah. We'll get a little bit more into that later, but what are some maybe misconceptions about divorce or things that people should know about divorce that they may not know blindly?
Well, one of the things I try, I always try to give best expectations, whether they're good or bad. I always say I'm very blunt, I'm very transparent. I think you experienced that, right? I don't know it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that if someone wants to make your life hell, they can.
That's right.
I cannot control that, right? They say, well, you said you were going to make it simple and keep the cost down. I'm like, if they want to hire an attorney and file every false, inappropriate, unreasonable thing about you, they can. And people are like, how? But they can't do that. I'm sure you can't do that. I'm like, yes, you can do that. Now, will we file something against it and say it's false and try to get it thrown out and have them hold them in contempt and make them pay attorney's fees? Sure, we can try all those things. But in the meantime, you're spending a year or 2 or 3 in court constantly having to respond. You have to go to court for presentment. You have to file a response, have a hearing on every single one they file. They can file anything they want. They can file absolutely false orders of protection. That's something we see all the time. Okay? That's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to men, which I know is stereotyping, but that's what I see in my experience. Women typically can get an OP against a man pretty simply. In emergency, I want to be clear, an emergency OP. They can say whatever they want. He hit me. I was scared. He took my keys, wouldn't let me drive. He took my phone. I was scared for my life. That's all you got to say. And you're basically going to be granted an emergency order of protection. That doesn't mean you'll get a plenary. Okay. The emergency is that 3-week period that they call a cooling off period. Usually then the plenary is when you have a full hearing and it probably will be denied. But they'll give you that emergency for that cooling off period just on the, let's just be safe, right? So what happens? The wife files the emergency order of protection, says he did whatever. He's removed from the home. He's restricted from having parenting time, right? So now he's gone weeks without seeing his kids. He's kicked out of the home. She was given exclusive possession, and then she files for divorce. And I see this all the time. And I've been in a situation many times where I say to men, if you stay in that home, in a volatile situation, they're like, well, we fight every day, and she threatens to call the house. I say, if you stay in that home, she is going to file an order of protection and she's going to get exclusive possession and make you not see your kids. Oh, she wouldn't do that. Every time. She wouldn't do that. It's not like that. I get the call a week later. Oh my God, Melissa, you were right. She filed an order, and I'm like, guys, this is 101. This is
right. This is what I do for a living.
Correct. This is what I see all the time. And the only reason I'm being gender biased, which you know me, I typically am not at all, but it's because our system is very much, as a woman, you could say he hit me, he did this, and just the court's going to just, again, for that 3-week period, give them that cool off period. And I think people think that can't happen, right? I didn't do anything, right? And so there's this concept that it's fair, right? And I think that's a conversation we had on many occasions, which you understood, right? Made you a very reasonable client, but it's not fair. It's not a fair system. Right? You don't get to be like, well, they're lying. So, the judges don't know. They have 1,000 cases they hear a day. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're just 1 in a million.
Exactly.
This idea of justice, the indignancy, well, the judge has to find out that he or she did this and this. The judge doesn't even care.
Right. They hear so much of it that they're like,
So
what's
sort
the
of like,
most fair situation for both parties? Like they don't really care about your petty fights or who did what and said
yeah,
what.
not only do they not care, they really don't want to hear it.
Right.
So it's a lot of trying to help people through those situations when it's like, well, go do something. You're my attorney. And it's like, we only have so many tools in the bag. That's what I would say.
Mhm.
I don't have a magic, don't be an asshole wand. I wish I did. That's usually the number one request of clients, like he and she did that,
Mhm.
what can you, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. Right. But yeah, I would say the biggest misconception is this justice, this fair, this, I can control the process. They can
Right.
possibly get an order of protection against me. I do a lot of DCFS, Department of Child and
Mhm.
Family Services, Abuse, Neglect. Do you know how many times people weaponize DCFS? I mean, horrific, horrific, right? Oh, my daughter came home with bruises, and they call, DCFS, and you can see the timing, right? It's like just when so and so was granted more parenting time, right? And it's like,
Mhm.
and they make these calls, and then and people say, well, but it's false. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
The court doesn't know. They're going to take a 60-day timeout and probably not let you see your kids while it's investigated. They get 60 days to investigate. Right? So
Mhm.
there's all these weaponizing tools that happen in divorce that people think that can't happen because that's not fair or right.
Right. I think a lot of people don't realize what people are capable of too. Like you're like, well, they would never do that. And I think
I could give you
people surprise
a
you.
dollar for every.
People are capable of doing things that you would never imagine. People that like would never imagine hurting you or turning their backs on you will. Like there's going to be people in your life who surprise you, who you're like, "Whoa, I wasn't expecting that reaction from them." It may not be the ex-spouse or anything, but there's going to be someone in your life who surprises the fuck out of you and you're like, "Whoa."
Absolutely.
I feel like it
But
happens to everyone.
I also feel like they go in wanting to do civil because I heard a couple stories and then they start talking to friends or other people and they're getting, other ideas in their head. And then I guess my question is, so if it's like 50-50 and, let's say the couple, they bought the house together and they can fight over it. I mean, how does something like that, do they just say, you know what, just sell it and split it?
Exactly.
Or are there,
Yep. I would say 9 times out of 10, the advice I tell my clients is if you are in agreement, you can do whatever you'd like with the house. I mean, in an equitable fashion, right? You could buy them out or refi or, give them the 5K instead of the house or, right? You can move things around however you want. If you're in agreement. If you fight over the
Mhm.
house, the judge is going to say sell it. I mean, it's that simple. There's been these outliers of like, mom has no other, housing option. She has 4 kids in the house and, it would be traumatic to the kids. One of the kids has special needs. You know what I mean? Like where the judge is like, I'm not making mom move out. Right. Like, you can tell like, or dad or whatever. Right. When there's circumstances to say, why would this be not in the best interest of the children? Is usually the reason. They're
Mhm.
not going to do it for financial reasons. Here's the harsh truth. I had to say this to mediation today. Because the one side said, if I pay that amount in maintenance, I'm not going to be able to hardly make my mortgage. I said, correct. Right? When you have a single household with 2 incomes, right? And then you go, boop, and now you have 2 mortgages. You have double
Mhm.
internet and utilities and water bills and yeah, they're correct. You are not in the same financial situation. People say, well, that's not fair. How do I do this? I'm like, I didn't make the legislation. You know what I mean? Like, I don't
Right.
know what to tell you. Right.
Mhm.
And so I think, the concept that, there's gonna be, some easy way to manage it, it really isn't, right? You are dividing one household with 2 incomes and creating two households. There's no other way to slice that, right? Unless you're moving in with family or something like that, right? That
Mhm.
is the nature of it.
Are you realizing how much easier yours was than like the average one?
oh, I know. And I think that's like when I was dating, I think that's was a turnoff because they were just like, oh no, there must be something else. I'm like, no, like we were civil. We knew it was time to go. I mean, we had like after we talked to the mediator, she had us split everything and she was always going to give me the house because I put a lot more into it, and she
Mhm.
knew it. And so yeah, we just kind of split everything. We came up with a schedule. And that's the nice thing, is that we're civil, so when things change, it's not like we have to go to the judge or anything. We just and our families still kind of get together, so it's
You still
actually
do holidays
nice.
together.
It's very
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So
So this is what was interesting to me is that like I think the reason yours was so civil, and Missy, you can chime in, you both wanted the split, correct? Like it was a mutual, like, yes, it's time. Neither one of you was like, no, 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 let's work on this. Let's try to make it work. You're both like, yeah, let's call it.
yeah, if it's just one person, the other person's gonna drag their feet as long as
Right.
they can.
Mhm.
Maybe
So
she'll
Missy,
change her mind.
how often do you see a mutual, like two people are like, yeah, we're gonna call it. We're still good with each other. We still care about each other, but
A quarter, you know?
oh yeah, that's more than I thought.
Yeah. Well, I would lump in there the like reluctant, like, I didn't want it, but I get it and I see it now. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they weren't like, maybe it wasn't like they came to the table and both decided, but they were like, at first it really hurt me and I was shocked, but then I kind of thought about it and I see that like blah, 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 blah. Right. And they come to the
Mm-hmm.
table. I would say that's definitely the emotional warfare is what creates the, what do you mean your divorce took 5 years and cost you $500,000? It's the emotional warfare, right?
Right.
It is the there is some I wish I knew like a term for it, but it is essentially I see it all the time. It is someone who tells you all I want is to be done. I want them out of my life so badly. It's all
Mm-hmm.
I want. And then all they do on a daily basis is create conflict with that person. I mean, it's shocking.
Right.
And I'll point it out, and they're like, "No, you don't understand." I'm like, "No, you are purposely putting yourself in these situations. If you wanted nothing to do with them, why would you even respond to that nasty comment? Why would you even respond to that? You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't pull yourself out. No
Right.
one is making you. You are putting yourself in there. No, no, no,
Do
that's
you
not.
feel like a therapist sometimes too? Like
I always say I'm 50% therapist. I'm not trained.
I agree. I think you are too. You're for me.
Right? Yeah. I always say I'm like, $4.25 an hour, you could get a therapist for a lot cheaper, but hey,
Right.
but that's on them. But yeah, there's some. I think if I had to take a guess, which is just from my 17 years experience of doing it, I think it's like once that fight's over, then what? Right? Then you have to face reality. Like then you have to like
Right.
start your life. Then you have to start from zero, right? And you're
Mm-hmm.
as much as they hate that conflict, at least it's something they know.
Right.
You'll never get any of these people to admit that. But that is a psychological thing that I think they go through. They just want to hold on,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't help anybody.
Yeah. It's familiar, even
Especially
though
when
it
kids are
sucks.
involved too.
Yeah.
I feel like if they want both done with it and they don't have kids, I feel like it's an easier. I mean, they could still fight over it, but I feel like that might be a little bit easier than when you have kids involved and so much family. Like you said, the family thing. Yeah. I mean, I think most of my family was all right with it. I mean, we've just kind of like gone on, but yeah,
It was like oddly easy. I think that's what some of the women that you dated were like, really? Because like
yeah.
they most of them were divorced, right? Like they were probably like, bullshit. Mine was so hard. And how is yours so easy?
Because then they think like, do you still have feelings for her? I'm like, no, but like
Right.
we're still in the kids' lives, and we're gonna put our best foot forward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we generally like we didn't hate each other, so there was no reason to do that. And I'm not the type of person to hold a grudge either. Like, hey, we tried, it didn't work, and we kind of move on. So I guess I mean I'm thinking like because people are like, well, if you didn't have kids involved, like, oh, well, if we didn't have kids involved, we probably wouldn't communicate as much, but I mean, and I think the tough part for us was it. We were going through it, and then when she decides to move out, a week later, COVID hits, and it just all hell breaks
Yeah.
loose. Because I'm running a warehouse, so I'm at work all the time. She's a teacher, and the kids are off, so we had this like I got the FaceTime. I would get to go into the garage and I had to be like 6 feet apart from the kids. I think that that was hard for them. So once we started getting visitation, I think that changed a lot. But yeah, it was tough because it was just like a weird time, and on top of it, throw a divorce onto it.
Right. How long did you go without having them like with you, like stay with you?
So COVID was like March, right?
Hmm.
So it was pretty much like the spring, the summer. We remember the first time we had like the kids over for a sleepover was like in October. I
Wow.
remember that. My son will still like remember the exact date. Like,
We'll see.
and then we
Yeah.
also had a dog in between, so the dog would go with the kids. That was kind of fun too, because we always talked about it when we were younger. Like, whoever, if we get a divorce, I'm grabbing the dog. No, I'm getting the
I
dog. So
love
the
that you
dog
guys
was part of the
talked about that.
divorce. So
So here's a
the dog went with,
that a
yeah.
lot of people don't know, and I will just start this by. I mean, there's a nice portrait of my dogs. I have 4
That's really
cats
cute.
and 2 dogs, so basically a farm. And there is actual Illinois law for parenting schedules, custody schedules of dogs and animals.
Is there?
Yep. So
That's
there's
interesting.
like joint decision making, parenting time. Yeah. I mean, which I think is great. With that
Hmm.
said, I think it can be extremely difficult, just logistically, right?
Yes.
Um, it sounds good for the first year or two. What do you do when, someone moves a little further away? They're in a relationship
Hmm.
now. Maybe they get a couple, maybe they have a kid, maybe they start to have dogs that they're like, it's just like, at what point are you like shuffling the dog back and forth every other week, right?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, we stopped after about a year because the dog wasn't really familiar
It's
with
not
the
great
house
for the
I moved
dogs.
in. So I just said, you know what, you can. They had more dogs, so I was like, just you can have them. And then I'd always go and see them and stuff. And but yeah, after a while, it got tough.
Exactly. Yeah, and I have an open door policy. With my ex-wife, if I'm out of town, she gets what I consider the right of first refusal. If you want to watch them, you want to take them. And actually, even though things got a little, tense during the divorce, we're friends now. She's friends with my girlfriend. I
That's
know her
great.
girlfriend. I still talk with my ex-mother-in-law and my, our
Hmm.
mutual friends. It kind of, gets weird. But it's been a year and a half now, and I think and there was no malintent, right? There was no like cheating or like any, you know what I mean? But that doesn't mean we both agreed to it, right? I was the one who asked for it, and
Hmm.
I think that it doesn't, no matter what, that puts a flavor and a taste in people's mouths, right? And then they come
Right.
up with their own narrative. And I will say that was probably the hardest part for me personally, like not talking about, being a family law attorney, but personally going through it was, you know, it didn't feel right for me to reach out to people to convince them why I was asking for a divorce or why I was in the right or you know what I mean? It's like that's my
Hmm.
journey.
Right.
And if they're going to support me and be there for me and they're my people, they'll eventually come around. I shouldn't have to like
That's
beg
very true.
people and explain myself and which was hard. I mean, it's hard. It's hard, just sitting in the silence in your home and losing the majority of people in your life and just sitting in it, right? That's not an
Hmm.
easy thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, and I think you learn. That's one of the things think is like is a unexpected bonus. And sometimes it's really hard to learn is you kind of find out who is really there for you. Like who's really going to have your back when you go through something like this. The people who don't, you find out real quick.
Yep, for sure. Which is
Hmm.
hard. It's hard when you're in your
Yeah.
40s.
But I feel like it's a valuable lesson to learn though. Like I feel like sometimes like I needed to know that. And I wouldn't have known that otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also
Hmm.
important to know that, it's never too late. I mean, if you're not dead, it's not too late. I see
Yeah.
people that are like, well, I'm 50, I'm 60. Like, what am I going to do now? Right? Like, no one wants to date
Whatever
me.
you
I mean,
want.
right. It's like anything you want,
Yeah.
right?
A lot of it, I feel like it's a financial thing that people like. They're like, we'll be miserable, but we'll be able to do what we want to do. Like for I know of like with kids involved, like that probably delayed the process probably about 3 years, 3 to 4 years, because you're just
So, and this is what I will say about that. If you are cordial, not fighting, then that's fine. Okay. But I would say the majority of the time when people say, we're staying together for our kids, no, you're not. The kids, just for the record, my background, really what I specialize in is, well, I shouldn't say specialize. We're not allowed to say that, but is, being a GIO, being a guardian ad litem. right? So I used to be a guardian ad litem for abused and neglected kids in DCFS. And then for the last 10 years, I'm a GAL for kids in, like high conflict divorces and custody battles, things like that. I mean, the kids always know. You think the kids don't know? Oh, we don't argue in front of them. Yes, you do. You think, your 10-year-old doesn't pick up when mom and dad are fighting? You don't think
Oh, yeah.
that affects them emotionally? When I meet these kids are like, I just wish mommy and daddy would have done this like a long time ago. The fighting always like, keeps me up at night. It makes me scared. And it's like, well, we're staying together for our kids. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're hurting your children.
Yeah.
You know?
They're staying together because it's scary to start over.
Correct.
Yeah. And it is. It's terrifying. But I'll say all three of us have been divorced. It was 1000% worth it. It was a really scary leap for me. But just having that chance to do what I wanted that was best for me was like the best thing I ever did. I don't regret it. I'm glad. And it was hard. It was a tough fight through it, but I am so happy now. And I wouldn't be here if I hadn't taken that leap.
And how much strength does it give you, right? That empowerment of I did this, right? Like I overcame this. I chose me over being unhappy and putting up with whatever it is that I was putting up with that I wasn't happy with. And you decide I can do this, right? And I want to be clear to anyone who listens to this. That does not mean you make the decision and all of a sudden you're doing great. It was getting up every day and saying, today I'm going to make it through today, or I'm going to make it through the next hour, right? And then it starts to build and build, and all of a sudden you go, wait, it's been 4 months and I've been on my own and I'm still alive, right? Like I'm okay, right? And like now I'm starting to like feel like I can do this. It is a process.
Right.
It is not an overnight thing.
No, it is a hard thing to go through. It's the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life.
Even when it's civil, and my therapist was saying, like, she's like, but you still went through a big event, like, regardless if it was civil or not, you're like, your life is changing. And that's when, kind of, because you kind of jump in the beginning. And then I always tell people it took me about a year, and then then you find yourself again. But like, for me, it was just like, even though it was civil and stuff, it was still a huge life changing event. Just kind of, and I would always joke, people would be like, what do you miss about divorce? I go, the second paycheck, because that's what, because you have to reevaluate everything, do everything differently, and then, yeah. So it's like, yeah, you go from like 2 paychecks to 1. You're like, oh, whoa, I can't do that anymore. I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's all perspective too, right? I mean, one of the questions I get when, if I'm talking with my clients, and I always try to be, relate personally and personably, and like just, like you said, Christina, try to be a person, not just like this robotic, stiff lawyer. People are going through these horrible situations. They don't want, like, here's what you can do and here's the law, right? Like they want a person to help them through it. And so when I tell some of my clients, I went through a divorce, they're like, oh my God, how was it? I'm like, for the most part, not bad. They said, how long did it take? I said, about 2 months. They said, oh my God, how'd you do it so fast? And I said, I just agreed, like, I'm sure I gave her more money than I should have, right? And I don't expect other people to do that necessarily. But to me, that was worth it. Financially, I know I can be okay. And so it was like, I'm not going to argue over a couple $1,000s. You know what I mean?
Right.
And again, I'm not saying my situation is ever. Some people that $2,000 is the world, right? And I get that. But for me, it was like, if you think this is worth this, or the, like she didn't like the appraisal, and she didn't, she thought the boat was worth more. What about the furniture? And it's like, oh my God, take whatever you want? It's like, well, I don't want the old furniture in the house. It's like, okay, but you want money for the furniture in the house, right? Like, whatever. It's like, okay, sure, right? I'll throw you $3,000 for this and $2,000 for this, or whatever. To me, it just wasn't worth it.
Right.
I just said, okay,
it wasn't worth your piece,
right?
It cost us.
But that's not fair. And I said, and that's what gets everybody hung up in a divorce. It's not fair.
Right.
I don't care.
I just wanted I wanted my bed and TV. That's it. I didn't care about anything else.
Who cares? I just wanted to move forward. You know what I mean?
Take to China. Go.
Right. Sure. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. I'll figure it out. I'll take a back
Paper
chair and,
plates.
one of the TVs is fine. I'm like, whatever, But again, I can't determine what that means to each person. That's different for every person. I had a client who I can't say was the best. This is one of those emotional warfare. We were literally trying to we were in the last moments of trying to finalize a divorce. And what judges will not do, they will not discuss your crap in your house, right? And that's what it is, right? Unless you have some brand new, we just bought this brand new patio set. We just bought this. Otherwise, no one wants your used couch, right? The judge will say, have a garage sale and you can split the $300 you make for your crap in your house, right?
Right.
No one wants your old stuff. Flat screens aren't worth anything anymore. DVD players that you know what I mean? These things aren't, there's no it has sentimental value. Maybe.
Right.
But unless you are really fancy, really rich people who buy extremely fancy, antique type stuff, it's a coffee table,
Right. It's just stuff.
Just stuff.
That's what I learned. It's just stuff.
And so this guy, he would not sign on the bottom line because he wanted the dog mom mug. And I was like, dude. He's like, nope, principal. He's like, I've given up so much. I want a dog mom cup. I was like, no. I was just I can't. I'm like, you can buy
Over a
700
mug.
dog mugs for the amount of time we spent arguing at $4.25 an hour over the dog mug. Sir. I was just I
just buy one, yeah.
And he because he knew it meant, you know what I mean? He knew.
Right.
He knew that was gonna get to her. And of course, and then I'm trying to deal with opposing counsels. Seriously, I'm I'm trying here. I don't know what to tell you. And they're like,
I don't want it either.
They're like, can you get your client under control? I'm like, look, and I finally did, but it was just come on, man, the dog mug or mom dog, so that's how petty it can get.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
I've seen forks counted. I've seen, it's holy good God.
It's because it's just stuff, and it's just stuff. You can get new stuff. I'm buying. Max knows we get new stuff every day.
Got 5 Amazon boxes every day. It's wow.
Not every day. I'm making the house a home.
Mm-hmm. Hey, my girlfriend just moved in, and it's the same, Max. I'm like, how many boxes show up in a day?
He said, what did you say about if we broke up, the Amazon guy would be like, wait, what happened?
Yeah.
Right, totally.
Yeah, something.
She's making the house better, because I'm a very simple person. I didn't have stuff hung up. I at least had a bed. Some guys just sleep on a mattress.
The bed was on a frame, not on the floor.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like, all right, I'll keep seeing him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some divorced dads are really living they're in college.
They just need a place to sleep, a place to eat, and a place to watch TV, and that's it.
That's right.
You're not kidding, because
you saw it.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah, I'm like,
okay, but let's talk about
45.
This I find fascinating. And maybe it's just because I made this up in my own, but I really do believe this. If I have concerns, if your is really in your 40s, I think that's a really good time frame. If you haven't been in either a very long-term relationship or married and divorced, I'm kind of concerned at this point. You know what I mean? We look at those things as negatives, right? Oh, they're divorced. It's no, that means that they were, they married the first love, right? They're 25 and they marry the person they think is going to be their person, right? And then, 10, 15, 20 years go by and they go, well, we're not the same people we were. We didn't grow together. Exactly. We're not happy. We're right? And it's that I respect. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The person who either avoids all of those relationships is never able to go all in, or someone who's in that 25-year relationship, it goes, I don't know, I hate my spouse, but what are you gonna do? It's well, do something, right? You don't have to sit in that,
Exactly.
And so I think it's
it's interesting. I dated one guy who had never gotten married, and it was like a Seinfeld episode where any little thing that no, I'm good. Because we stayed friends, and he would tell me about girls he dated, and it'd be the littlest thing. He's like, no, I can't see her anymore. I'm like, this is why you're single. This is
Oh,
why.
Yeah, I met someone and I was shocked because I didn't think, but I think some of hers was her job moved her a lot, which I get it. And so then I asked her like, well, have you been in a serious relationship? She's like, yeah, I had a couple of them, which isn't as bad. Like if you meet someone that's like, no, I really haven't had a serious relationship yet, then the light goes on.
right.
Like how many
Like
bodies do they
normal
have
when you're
buried?
maybe in your 20s, right? But once you're in your 40s, it's like, and I'm not asking for the world, right? But did you at least have one or two where you were like, oh, I dated them for a year or two, right? Like, was there
Right.
someone
Oh,
you could
yeah.
like legitimately date? Because what that says to me is you were able to go exactly like you said. There's compromise, there's grace, there's, looking at your own faults, right?
Mm-hmm.
Realizing, someone's putting up with me, right? Someone's always putting up with you as well, right?
Exactly.
We are not perfect people, right? So it's like, what is it?
I'm close. Just kidding.
I understand. But to
Toss,
get to that
toss.
point of, you know, over 20 years of being an adult and you never once got to a point where you can be in a serious relationship, that to me is scarier than I'd even take someone who's divorced twice. It's like, all right, at least you went all in and decided it wasn't for you, right?
Right? So I know you're not afraid of commitment.
Right. Right.
Except that's false. Because so many guys are afraid of commitment after divorce. One
Weird.
is sitting on the
Yeah.
screen. It's fine. I
I'm
blocked them
guilty.
down.
I'm guilty.
No
Yeah.
labels. No labels.
My girlfriend, oh, it's a point of contention.
Yeah.
Here's why. Because I think, and this is something that's really interesting too to think about, right? Is that, and I know I'm probably an outlier of this, but some other people, some other clients I've had are like this too. To me, making an oath and a promise and breaking it was like devastating to me because I was
Mm-hmm.
just raised, my dad is one of the most, he is loyal, his integrity is his everything, his word is his bond, and that's how I was raised. So it's like I swore my dedication, loyalty, and love to this person in front of everybody who was important to me. And now I said death do us part. You know what I mean? I said sickness and health. And now I'm breaking that. And that was like, it made me really question me as a person, whether that's fair or not, you know?
Right.
And that concept to me, I've had this discussion with my girlfriend many times, who is like, she understands that, but at the same time, she's like, so she's never been married. She was engaged for like 7 years. So she was through kind of like
Yeah.
marriage, with long term. But she's like, well, she wants to get married, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, I get and I respect. But the concept of this point, I've already done that promise. I've already broken it. And it scares me, it has nothing to do with her. It scares me to yet do that again. If you would have told me the day I got married that I was going to get a divorce, I would have bet you $100 million. You would have hooked me up the lie detector and I could have said bold face that would never ever happen. I was certain. That's fine.
Right.
So it doesn't matter how certain I am that I love her and want to be with her. I don't know how I'm going to feel in 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Max?
I think that's something that you realize after
Yeah,
divorce too.
exactly. I mean, I was never like, that's why I tell people I never thought after the divorce, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to get married again. And I still kind of like, I'm still not sure. But like I said, there was a time where I didn't think I was even going to meet anyone because it was just like crazy, crazy, crazy. So then,
Right. And I
Mm-hmm.
and here's what I say, and this is kind of when I get people to like be like, hey, I kind of see what you're saying. I say to my girlfriend, would you rather me get married and stay with you because we're married? Or would you want me to choose you every day of my life? I'm not afraid of commitment. I tell her, you can, I'm your person. I love you. I'm in love with you. You moved in. Like, there's no trepidation of where we are at. But do you want us to get married and then, how many years would I might stay with you because we're married versus you're my person and I choose you that day, that year, How many people do I see in my profession that stay in marriages because they're married?
Right. Because it's just easier to stay than to go through all the stuff. Yeah, that's fair.
You know?
Well, that's a good segue because I want to talk prenups.
favorite word.
So, according to the Harris poll conducted in 2022, 15% of Americans signed a prenup in 2022, up from just 3% in 2010. The increase is also notable in younger generations like millennials and Gen Z. Poll states that 42% of U.S. adults support the idea of prenups, and 35% of unmarried people are likely to sign one. Yet they're still so hush-hush. So it's not exactly romantic, but it's important, especially coming from a divorced perspective. So let's talk about prenups.
So here's the misconception. A prenup does not mean you don't get any of my stuff. It's not what a prenup is. A prenup is whatever you want it to be. It just means that you decide the terms of what your marriage means. You determine what your marital contract means.
Right. Instead of the state.
Correct. You can agree to split things. You can agree to, you can put anything you want. You can, as long as it's constitutional, right? And not like contrary to law, right? So you could say, if we get married and we buy a house in the first 5 years, but get divorced within the first 10 years, we're, it's staying in who's ever name that put the money down or something. Like you can put any, you can say it becomes a marital asset that we split 50-50 after 5 years. Or, if you decide to put my name on it after 3 years, then it becomes mine. Like you can put anything you want.
It's a controllable contract. Why wouldn't it,
Right?
It's like entering the contract with an actual contract.
Right. Versus signing into a contract you don't know exists. Right? So it's not saying you don't get any of my things. That's what people think a prenup is. I keep mine, you get your hands off. No. And people don't realize there's so many intricacies. Let's say, for example, I did one the other day and he was like, oh my God. He's like, I didn't even think about that. Right. And it's like, the prenup said that if whatever they came into the marriage with, their 401ks and IRAs and blah, 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 prior to the marriage would remain theirs. Which typically is as well if you don't have a contract. But again, by putting it in here, it's solid, right? It's there's no question about it. And then he said, and then once we get married, anything after that, we split 50-50. Does that include capital gains, losses? What if you take that money from that account and put it in a different account? What if you cash it out and pay for a house? What if he's like, oh, I didn't think about that. And it's like, there's a million different things that can happen, which if you leave it up to when you get a divorce, the interpretation is all across the board. Whereas if you spell it out, and again, I'm talking about that's saying you each do get it, but how do you get it? What do you consider when you get it? So once you get a divorce, there's no argument. It's already detailed. You already decided it.
Yeah. And I see where people are like, well, that's so unromantic. It's so like you're planning on splitting up. And I don't think that's the case. I think it's like you said, you're entering into a contract where you actually know the terms when you're
But divorce is what, 60%?
Yeah.
So I mean,
exactly.
you got
play the odds.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't go into it.
People, like if I have a business,
divorced.
right? After your first marriage, right? And you start a business or you become successful, you want to protect it just in case something were to happen.
Sure.
Yeah. I think it's just being realistic. And I think when you're young and you're going into your first marriage, if hopefully you only have one, but like we're not. So like it feels like you're jinxing yourself by doing it, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's just a smart thing to do because I don't think people know that you're getting into, you have a prenup, whether you know it or not.
You just didn't create the terms.
You don't know what's in it. You're going to be surprised when you find out. But when you have one going into it, you created the terms. You agreed on it. You came to it, whatever you thought was fair. And so it's just a contract.
Yeah.
It's not. We're definitely going to split up.
It's easy. We turn those around super easy and have other attorneys we work with that it's a cooperative process. It's super easy. The other thing is a lot of people don't know you can do a post-nup. All a post-nup is you go, oh wait, we probably should have had a prenup. Now that we're married, at any time, you can reach a contract during the marriage. And that's so rare. I don't think anybody even knows that's a thing.
I feel like it's just like insurance almost.
Yeah, it's like, let's say you're married 5 years and you're kind of, not really sure, well, what would happen if, I get this or you get that or this happens or what if we start a trust, but what if my grandparents start a trust, but then we put in the kid's name and then it's like, you can do a post-up and say what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, it has nothing to do with you get it, I don't get it, keep your hands up. It's just an agreement as to what happens so no one's confused. No one wants to go through a fight like that over kids' college plans when you get a divorce, right? That's like, so you can come.
It's things you don't think of when you enter into the marriage to begin with.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I am a huge supporter of prenups, and I don't know that I would have been 25 years ago when I first got married. I would have been like, oh no, that's so like, I feel like you're jinxing yourself, but I just think you're just being smart. You're just protecting yourself, not assuming they're going to hurt you, but like you've got that reassurance because like you said, the divorce rate's really high. You don't get married expecting to get divorced, but you don't know what's going to happen. And I think that's the difference in like my mindset now than it was obviously before. Like if I do get married again one day, I know that like the intent is to stay married, but I also know you don't know what happens in 20 something years.
Exactly.
So, yeah. All right. So this is kind of along the same lines. According to the Mighty Pursuit podcast, 86% of divorced people are likely to get remarried within 5 years. So what advice do you have to people looking to get married for a second time?
Well, just when I put on the therapy hat, I would like to think that they would learn from their mistakes. I think that's one of the easiest things to do, of course, right? You're unhappy, you're lonely, you start to date and you fall into another relationship, right? And I'm not faulting anybody. I mean, I get it. But I do recommend therapy. I recommend listening to some good audiobooks, do some soul searching, figure out what it is that, you are always a part of, the breakdown of a marriage. I'm just saying there's always a part where you can go, how do I not get into this again? Right? How did I get here? Right? There's something that you could work on to say, I don't want to be in this situation again. What was I not seeing? What was I overlooking? What red flags was I ignoring? There's always a pattern. There's always something that we all do that. That's just natural humans, right? I am a horrible people pleaser. And it is, I've had to do so much work. It's
same.
Right? And it's like, oh, well, what's so bad? I like to take care of people and make people happy, and like I don't like to step on people's toes, and like it's not a big deal, blah blah blah. It's like, yes, it is. You create the situation you're in. And I see that. I see how I created, the problems in my marriage. It's because I didn't stand up for anything I wanted. I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do that, and this little thing, till it's, oh my God. Right?
Right.
And so you have to figure out what are the things you're doing to create this narrative, this cycle. A lot of us don't put in that effort. It's uncomfortable. It's hard. It's hard to look in the mirror and say, what part did I play? So if you want to get back in that relationship after 5 years, I can almost guarantee you if you don't do the work, it's going to be the same situation.
Right. And that's what I've told people who are in bad dating relationships. I'm like, did you do all that to get divorced just to do this again?
And people are settling because they don't want to, because of the dating world is crazy. So they find someone decent and they're settling again. And it's just like you're doing it all over again. That's why I kept telling myself, is like, I'm not going to settle. I'm not going to settle.
For sure.
And you didn't.
For sure. And I think that's a huge one, I think, Max, as you hit it on the head. It's like that dating fatigue, right? And it's like, oh my God, like I've been through this 5 years and I have seen psycho after psycho. And then I met this person and they were like decent, right? And you're like, I'm good. Like, I'm just going to call it a day, right? Like this person's like mostly normal. They have a job, like they're nice to me.
Bar goes so low at
right. Like it's just like basic. But I see it all the time, right? It's basic, right?
He has all his teeth.
Yeah,
it's all good.
Totally. And it's like, okay, well, and look, I guess I don't want to necessarily fault people. Who knows what it is that matters to people? Having someone versus no one to some people is worth it.
But after a couple of years, that's what I realized is like, you know what? this isn't worth it. Like, I would rather be alone. I have my kids, my family. Like, I'm not really alone. And then once I kind of did that, it opened up, then I really started, no, yes, this is not what I want. This is what I want. So, but it's important. But I think some people, they all do it, right? Right when you divorce, like, I'm gonna fall in love again. Yeah, and it's like it's never gonna be the first relationship. And you hear stories like,
Sometimes it's pretty close.
yeah, sometimes they do it right away, but sometimes it's like
Hmm.
it's gonna be, you're gonna have your ups and downs. And some people have been still doing it, and so it's like you just gotta. It's just one of those things. You just gotta like, just go for it. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. So, as someone with a unique perspective on relationships, since you see kind of the worst in relationships, you see the worst side of it, you see a lot of things that fall apart, and like just you see a lot of bad relationships. How has that impacted your personal view on love and marriage and things like that in general?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's changed after I, had the first marriage and that fell apart. I mean, I think in general, I have a fairly high expectation of what I would want in a partner. I'm someone who spends a lot of time, uh, that was my cat, my psycho cat jumping. That self-exploration and reading, I say reading, I mean listening to audiobooks, going to therapy, trying to do that work, and it's like it's almost like it's like you get yourself out of the dating pool because you got too advanced. Does that make sense? You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's like
Yeah.
you're looking for someone else who's like putting all that work and know when you make a reference about something in like, the self-help or betterment world, you expect them to know it, or
Hmm.
you expect them to know how to handle disagreements in an appropriate, mature
Right.
way. You expect them to, and it's like, and I'm not perfect, please, I'm not. But I'm just saying, when you get to a certain age and you've already gone through it, it's like that's what you're expecting, right? Like it's like
Hmm.
at this level, and like you said, sometimes you're just looking for not certifiably insane,
Yeah.
like you said, like their bed has a frame,
Yeah. Wouldn't believe some of the things. I mean, if they had a job and had their own place, I was like, wow,
right?
because so many don't. And I'm like, why are you dating?
Totally.
Like, let's work on getting our lives together, and then
Hmm.
let's look for a partner. But yeah, so you don't have to share anything you don't want to share. But do you have any crazy dating stories?
After the divorce, not really. I was very, very, very fortunate. I dated one woman for a couple months that was, just fun and whatever, getting out there. And
Mm-hmm.
then she was nice enough, just wasn't the person for me. And then I met my current girlfriend on Facebook dating, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was again, I thought I was just gonna just go have some fun and, meet someone and, whatever, go on some dates and just have get out there and experience life. And she ended up being like this exceptional human that I just literally like, I'm still in awe that she chose me.
You guys are extremely cute,
Thank you.
like adorable.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, she's just she's also a people pleaser. So I've never been with someone like that, which is a
Mm-hmm.
very unique experience. Um, to be with someone who's so kind and giving and loving, and the grace she gave me. I was what 3.5 months out of asking for a separation, in the
Mm-hmm.
middle of a divorce. No one wants that situation. But she, gave me that grace, and, she, for whatever reason, said to her it was love at first sight and she knew I was her person, and
Aw.
so she, put up with me going through what I went through. So I was extremely fortunate, extremely fortunate. I mean, I tell her every day how lucky I feel, how wonderful she is, and I think too that's something that sadly I don't see a lot, whether it's my friends' relationships, my, coworkers' relationships, what I see in my professional world with divorces. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it's our generation or what's happening, but I don't know why the aversion is. Maybe it's insecurities, but like tell your person how great they are. Tell them when they do something that you appreciate. Tell them what, you like about them. Think about are you appreciative that they're in your life for that day? Tell them they're beautiful. Tell them, you know what I mean? Like, there's such a sort of, I don't know, negative connotation to that. You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about?
I just
Yeah,
don't think people can talk anymore.
Great. Fair.
it's true. And I know we're still relatively, like, we're still kind of in the honeymoon phase. It's been like a year and a half. But, like, Max does that for me. I know I do it to you because you're like, wow, stop. But, like, it's something that absolutely didn't do in my marriage or any of the other relationships I was in. So, like, I just think and what's interesting is because you say, like, you've never dated anyone like your girlfriend before. I've never dated anyone like Max. We are actually very similar in certain ways where we're both, like, we take care of people, we do things like that. And it's just interesting being with someone who's so similar to you in that way. Like, sometimes it doesn't work. I think in this case it does, obviously. But, like, you still tell me all the time, you're like, I'm still getting used to this. I'm like, it's been a year and a half. But
I'm not used to like someone. I've always, after the divorce, I just did everything on my own, and it's so hard for me to ask for help. And she's seen that, and it's like I'm slowly like letting the reins down a little bit, but I can't all the way. I was just so used to doing everything all the time, like super dad mode, boom, 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 because I had
mhm.
to on my days, and you know, it's just you're not used to it. And I'm like, wait, what? Why are you doing the dishes? Like, why you cook? Like, I just wasn't used to that, and it's just like because she's just doing anything to help out.
Mhm.
She's like, "Hey, do you want me to go pick up your daughter?" I'm like, wait, what? Like, cause I always think like, what? Because my mind is like, what's she want out of it? Like, what's she gonna ask for later? But it's not like that.
Right.
It's like she generally just wants to
I
help
can
out.
see
It's
that you're
like, oh my
tired.
gosh,
You're
it's so
exhausted.
nice
You
to
just
have.
you just got home. You don't want to get back up and go get her. I can see that you're exhausted. I'm like, "Oh, I can go get her.
That's
She's
how
5 minutes away."
that's yeah.
Yeah.
You talk about Summer Max, right?
I love Summer Max. He's my favorite. He's showing up. Yeah.
No more lunches. Yes,
He
making
gets
lunch at 6 o'clock in the
You
morning.
could
No
get up and
more.
make me lunch if you really miss it at any point.
I can give you Uncrustables and fruit and
There
vegetables
you
Good.
and
go.
I'd
a
be
cheese
fine with
stick.
that. Sweet. All right. So, I don't want to take up too much of your night, but thank you so much for coming
Thank
on
you. That's
and
awesome.
sharing all
Yeah.
that. That was great
For
information.
sure. Thanks.
So, your
I
office
actually
is.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, if you're married in another state, is that where and you move to another state? Is it where you get divorced? Is that the state you go by, or the state you're married in?
Jurisdiction is where either party lives or where the child has maintained residence for 6 months. In Illinois, again, I cannot say what other states do. So let's say a couple gets married in Kentucky, husband moves to Illinois without the child, mom and child are in Kentucky. Dad can file for divorce in Illinois. Mom can file divorce in Kentucky. Probably, and this is just a generalization, because the child's in Kentucky, if you got into a jurisdictional battle, it probably would revert, like Kentucky would probably win for forum nonconvenes or whatever it's called. What's the most convenient forum for this?
Hmm.
And it's just, you go, well, there's one contact. If the GAL is appointed, right, is the GAL going to fly out to Kentucky from Illinois? Right? Like, that's not a good use of.
Right.
But yes, just in general, it's wherever a party lives, jurisdiction, and then where a child is for 6 months.
That's such a
Yeah,
specific question.
I was just curious. I actually wanted to ask her. I mean, obviously, people know who Dave Portnoy is from Barstool, right? And he has these interviews. He's not divorced. Like, he met his wife before he got really rich, and he always says like the judge says it's not worth getting a divorce. And I never heard that before. And so he's saying like he's got so much money that he would get like. So that's the weirdest thing. They're like not divorced, yet they still have both of them have the like open say to like take money and stuff. I thought that was the weirdest thing. I don't know if
That
you
is
ever
weird.
heard
I
of
have
that.
heard of it. I think it's
I
'Cause
feel
he,
like Missy's heard of everything, though. You've probably seen a lot of things.
I've seen a lot. Yeah. Yeah, there was one, I was in court. It wasn't my case. I just overheard it, and I know the judge very well who had the case, and he's pretty lackadaisical, but even him, they get up there and it's I think one of the issues, it was English second language, so I think they had a translator, but it kind of things got a little lost in translation, if you will. But essentially, basics were they got married 25 years ago. And I'll say this, people say, oh, we were separated. unless you go into court and get a legal separation, you are not separated. That is not a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, we haven't lived together for 20 years. I don't care. It doesn't matter. The judge can still say, and over those 20 years, whatever you accumulated is split 50-50. You are married, right? You just went into court and got a legal separation. You are still married, right? So these people are married 25 years, had not seen each other, spoken to each other, knew even where each other were after 2 years of marriage. Okay?
Wow.
So they're each now like 50 years old. And finally, he wants to get remarried again, right? So he files for divorce. She is like cleans houses, makes less than minimum wage, has no retirement, lives with her kids, nothing, right? They're trying to prove up the divorce, meaning finalize, right? He has to sign on the dotted line. He has 5 homes, multiple businesses. He's a multimillionaire. He has multiple cars, and she agreed to take nothing. And the judge was like, sir, sir, and he's like,
Throw her a bone.
Right. And that's what he said. He's like, I'm not asking you for you to give her 50-50. I get, because she's like, the wife's like, we've been like, I want nothing to do with him. We've had nothing to do with each other since we were, 25 years old. I want nothing. The judge is like, I mean, I hear you, but like, maybe throw me a car or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like something, right? You gotta
take a car.
We're like, gotta give her something, right? And so, and like me and other attorneys in the room were just like rolling. Like this guy who's like freaking multi-millionaire, like, at that point, just throw her something. Come on, you ain't gonna miss it.
No.
Up for $100K, walk away.
Here's one of my, mini houses or cottage or something.
It was wild. So yeah, I've seen it all. So that's what I was going to say. You want to stay married, that's fine. You run the risk of your maintenance obligation getting longer. Once you're married 20 years, you can have a permanent maintenance obligation.
I thought it was weird because he talked about like, she was there when he can only they can only eat hamburgers, and now he's like, I mean, it's over. I think he sold the company for 500 million, and I just thought that was odd. Like at one point, it's like just I mean, if you want, I understand what he's saying. It's like you don't want to split the half, but I mean, it's odd that like they both would agree,
right?
But I think she gets whatever she wants.
They're probably both really comfortable, and they're like, yeah. If they're both open to it and they can agree on it, then I guess that works until he meets someone else. And they're like, I'm not cool with you still being married.
That's when the rub.
Right.
Well, I think that's why some of the stuff ends.
That's exactly.
Because he says, "Oh,
that's funny." Yeah, Missy, your office is Kuffel Law in Naperville. You service multiple counties, though, right? Can you do any county in the area? Like,
yeah,
do you specialize in one county?
Yeah, legally we can do all of Illinois, but typically we do Will County, DuPage, Cook, Kendall, Kane. Did I say Will? Those are kind of like our main, the collar counties, if you will.
Right.
Now, yes, of course, if it's a person, hey, it's my cousin, they're in DeKalb. Can you do it? Yes, we've done DeKalb, McHenry, Lake, kind of little further out. But, once you get a little further out than that, it's not cost beneficial to get someone who's 3 hours away who has to drive 3 hours and charge you for that. I always tell them,
right,
you can hire me, but, you probably want to look for someone closer in your area.
Yeah. So you offer consultations, of course. You do family law in general, correct? Or do you guys do any other types of law in your office, or is it typically just family?
A lot of DCFS. So, and again, I talked about how that kind of, coincides with the family law. You get a lot of people calling DCFS on their, spouse while they're going through divorces or post-decree trying to get custody. I also do, which is in the realm of family law, but we do like orders of protection. I talked about how that comes into play. We do adoptions. We do second parent adoptions, meaning, like same-sex couple. We do name changes. We do guardianships, pre-nups, post-nups, mediation, and GAL work. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you need some legal help in those fields, reach out to Missy.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Happy to help.
So, yeah, thanks again for joining us. I really appreciate it. It was good to talk to
Yeah, it
you.
was fun.
Yeah,
It's good to
great
see
talking to you
you.
guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, thanks again, and I'll let you know when it comes out.
All right, sounds good. Take care, guys.
All right. Thanks. Bye. That was good. That was a lot of good information.
Prenup, here we come. But think about it. So everyone's perception of a prenup is like, yeah, I get half of everything, but it is pretty much it's a contract. It's a
I
smart
love
thing.
that perspective, though, because I've always thought about it as like you have a prenup regardless of whether you sign one or not. But if you think about it more as you're entering a contract either way, at least this way, you're entering a contract under your terms,
Yeah.
or at least terms you agree on before you go into the marriage. That's such a it's so much better to look at it that way than to look at it in the we're just planning on breaking up. I don't think that's true.
Especially the athletes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's and like I said, state to state is it's different.
Right.
Because I know some states, like if you're, I think if like the spouse cheat, I don't know. There's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of stuff.
Every state's a little bit different. Illinois is basically no fault, 50-50. I think a lot of people don't understand what that means either. So, yeah, the best thing I did was talking to Missy first to be like, what is, like, I don't know anything about divorce. I didn't know anyone who had actually gone through one, like, who was close to me, at least in Illinois. I didn't know the steps. I didn't know any of it. So I just went to her and she just gave me all that information. And it was so helpful to me.
It's kind of off topic, but she was kind of talking about relationships and stuff, and it's funny after you get divorced and then you're dating stuff, and now we're in a good relationship. Now we're in a good relationship. Now you see other relationships, and you're like, what the fuck are they still? Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like what
It is.
So
It is. Like, I think when you've been in unhealthy relationships and they're in a healthy one and you can recognize that, I think you see things that, like, you can see when people are trying to, like, mask something. You're like, okay, I did that
but
too.
everyone talks about it. Social media hides everything. I was talking to a friend, and I'm like, "Oh,
Mhm.
you look happy." He's like, "Well, yeah, it's social media. Everyone looks happy. Like, you're
Yeah.
not happy?" He's like, "No, I'm happy, but yeah,
It's the truth. I
yeah."
know there are a few people who are totally shocked at my split. And they're like, but you're such a perfect family. I'm like, on
Everyone
Facebook?
was blindsided by ours.
Of course
My
we're
mom
perfect
was
on Facebook.
my mom was so upset.
I'm good at building a picture. I'm not
I
going to
remember
go
I
on Facebook and be like, this happened and we argued about this today. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm
remember
going to be
my
like, we had a
mom the
lovely
next
time.
day. She's like, "Me and your father were so distraught. We drank like 2 bottles of wine."
What did she say though? Let's relive this. What did
She
your
was like,
mom say?
she was. I thought my parents would be easy. I was more worried about her parents, but it was
Mhm.
opposite. And I was just like, my parents were just like, "Wait, what? What?
But
Wait,
what
what?"
did your mom say this weekend?
That I'm the greatest son ever.
What did she say about me?
I don't know. What did she say about you?
I'm so glad he found you. To me.
Oh, she did, didn't she? Yeah. Yeah.
See, it all works out.
And you were sober, huh? Yeah. See how that works.
What else happened this weekend? You met my dad, finally,
Yeah.
after a year and a half. Were you sober?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, for the most
Yeah.
part, but you're just doing shots.
No,
Asaki.
I wasn't doing shots. They were squirting wasabi into my mouth. There's a
Not wasabi, it
difference.
was sake.
Or
Wasabi
sake.
would be way worse.
Oh, wasabi would be awesome. I'd have been. Yeah, they're like in like the little squirt bottles. They just kept going. Like I'm not gonna say no.
That was hilarious.
I'm not gonna say no. That's why I keep telling people. I'm like, Woo's Place is. It's like Benihana meets karaoke.
It was so fun.
But they're
Yeah.
fun. They're like I've said this like 50 times. Like I never thought I'd ever hear a hibachi chef start singing "Country Roads," the John Denver song.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and they always play it like that's West Virginia's like fight song, pretty much. And like it's just hilarious. And then they're doing Backstreet Boys, and then like
Mm-hmm.
what's that thing like? Oh, it was a TikTok trend for a while years ago. Like oh yeah or something. I
What
don't
was he
know.
saying?
Yeah.
Something over and over,
Can
I
I
can't
get a
remember.
oh, yeah, can I get a or something? Yeah. And then the fire happened and he's got this little squirt bottle with this little kid peeing water.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome. It was fun.
It was fun. That's probably the most fun I've had at, like, a dinner like that.
No, because it's like it's the hibachi like Benihana, but they kick it up a gear. Like those,
They do.
I mean, you don't want to leave. Like they're
The
so
food is
fun,
exactly the same I feel like the food's exactly the same no
right?
matter
But
where you go,
it's
but it
like
was
the
so
singing and
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
and even the family next to us was having fun too. It's
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
you
So
gotta
Woo's house, they have them in Illinois and Indiana.
whose house?
Woo's
Whose
house.
house?
But we went to the one in Naperville and it was a lot of fun. We had a good time.
And he said there's one coming to kill deer, so
Mhm. Yeah. I was going to talk about this and we were running low on time, so I didn't want to because it was going to turn into a whole thing. But one of the biggest things she told me, which it's funny because I obviously did not listen to her, is avoid dating. She's like, the thing that will turn a cooperative divorce into a, I don't know what the word is, litigious one or whatever, more volatile one is dating.
if
Is
one person's
having,
dating, yeah.
yeah, that nothing causes more like anger or frustration or whatever vengeance than that. And so her advice to me was to not date or whatever, do so
'Cause
quietly or whatever
I
it
guess they
was.
feel like, oh, the the pen's not even dry, and she's already going out dating
Mhm.
other people, so she must have not cared about me and this and that.
Mhm.
It's like, no,
I
I
think
told you,
everyone's
like
different.
the minute we got separated, the minute we were like we are separated, I was out. I was like, boom, I'm going out. I
The
was like,
thing is, I think because people are like, you should wait a year, you should wait this much time. I think every relationship is different. Every person's different. The amount of therapy you've been through, the amount of
it's up to
how
you. At the
ready
end of the
you
day, it's up
are
to
is
you.
different. Yeah, it's different for every person. But it's also, I think, a really big deal who left. If you didn't
Yeah,
leave the relationship, if you were left, you have a lot more healing to do than the person who left,
I feel like a
typically.
lot of people who are giving advice are the peanut gallery that aren't like walking in your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about that, and I just everyone's different. Like
Yeah.
some people
Do
need
what
to.
works best for you. I'm
I
glad I
wasn't
did.
ready. I wasn't ready, but I didn't give a shit because I just wanted to try something new and do it out there. And then probably about a year into it, then I was like, okay, I think I'm in a better place. And then
But I
I
will
don't know. I
say
mean,
she was right. Like, that's what caused a lot of turmoil. And so, like, if you want a truly cooperative, easy divorce, leaving other parties out of it and not dating is probably the best move. Do people listen? No, I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't because look where I'm at now. So it worked out for me. So I wasn't afraid of dating. I was excited to try it out and get into it. I know a lot of people are, and that's fine too. If
I
you're
just wanted to
not
get
ready,
laid.
then you're not ready.
I just wanted to get laid.
I didn't think that's what I want. Because I'm such a like
Oh no, I knew
relationship
it.
person. I thought I wanted a relationship, but that's what I needed. That's all I needed. And then once I got it out of my system, I was like, okay, now I can focus on the person and finding the right person and not just finding someone to hook up with. So it all happened a lot faster for me though. I went through a lot in a very short amount of time.
Mm.
Worked out. It worked
Yeah.
out. All right. So let's wrap this up. All right. So please be sure to rate, review, subscribe, leave us some comments, follow us on social media. We are No DPics Pod on Instagram, No Dick Pics Pod everywhere else. You got anything else?
Nope.
No.
I'm good to
You never
go.
do. Huh. Okay.
I do my peace sign, and I won't do what I did last time. It's
No,
very
thank you, because I
inappropriate.
had to edit it out. Okay. All right. We will be back next week. Bye.
Bye bye.